Have you ever put your entire heart and soul into crafting the perfect page or spread in your bullet journal, only to turn the page and discover a scene of absolute carnage? If so, I'm so sorry, and also this video is for you. The phenomena you're seeing here, where the ink has travelled through from the side of the page where you placed it, to the opposite side of the page and even onto the page opposite, is called bleeding. And it is every bullet journaler's nightmare. We're also going to talk about bleeding's less terrifying younger sister ghosting later on, but I wanted to start with bleeding because I'm in a bullet journaling Facebook group, and I see posts in there almost every day from people who are new to bullet journaling asking, "I'm having problems with bleeding, what notebook should I buy so that this isn't a problem for me anymore?" Honey, I'm so sorry, but your notebook may not be the problem. It might help to change your notebook depending on what kind of pens you're using, but if you're using an alcohol-based marker, you're going to run into this problem no matter how thick your page is. Consider this your comprehensive guide to bleeding and ghosting, what causes it, how to avoid it, and what to do if it's already happened to you and you need to try to fix it. Also, hi, hey, hello, my name is Erin, and I make a new bullet journaling or stationery video every week here on my YouTube channel, so if you get something useful out of this video, maybe consider sticking around to see what else you might learn. Or just to hang out, that's good too. We're going to talk about pens first, because the right pen can make all the difference, but the wrong pen can ruin your life. I'm very sorry about my terrible spelling here, but the first thing I want to talk about is alcohol markers. It turns out what your pen is made from makes a really big difference to the way it interacts with your page. There are typically two kinds of pens out there: pens that are made with ink based on alcohol and pens that are made with ink based on water. Alcohol-based markers are incredible for art. You can blend the colors together in a way that you can't quite do with a water-based marker, but be warned, they are a terrible choice for bullet journaling. They are not your friend in your bullet journal. You really need a particular kind of paper, a very thick cardstock, to use an alcohol marker without it wreaking all kinds of havoc with the paper. Not only does it bleed through to the other side, but it can also make the paper tear if it's too saturated. Even if you have a bullet journal with quite thick paper like the standard companies like Archer and Olive and Notebook Therapy make, alcohol markers will still bleed through the page. Sorry. I've used alcohol markers to write on this page, as you can see here, and when we flip it over to the other side, it has saturated through the paper, come through the other side, and a little bit has transferred onto the next page in the book too. How do you tell what your pen is made from? How can you tell if it's an alcohol marker or water-based? First of all, it's probably written somewhere on the packaging. It's not always the case, but usually a pen will tell you on the box or even on the pen barrel itself what it's made out of. If it's not written on the pen itself or on the packaging, a pretty surefire way to tell is that the pen will have a very strong smell. If you know what a permanent marker smells like, then you've smelled an alcohol marker, because the alcohol is actually what makes a permanent marker permanent. There's also a pretty distinct look to alcohol markers as well. They're usually in a thick, square barrel, some kind of white or grey coloured plastic barrel, and they often have a chisel tip on one end, which has a flat edge, and a bullet tip on the other end, which is like a normal felt tip pen kind of tip. This is the quintessential example of an alcohol marker. This one's from a brand called Copic, and they are really known for their alcohol markers. You can see it has that square barrel shape, it's dual tipped. I can't actually tell because of this sticker whether or not mine have that they are alcohol based written on them somewhere, so I'm going to assume they don't. I don't want to take the sticker off in case it's all sticky residue under. You can see it has a chisel tip, which is flat on one side for colouring in large areas and getting sharp lines, and a bullet tip on the other side, which is the one I've used for writing the text on the page underneath. This is also an alcohol marker. This one is from Kmart, which is an Australian cheap homewares type of place. They don't look exactly the same, as you can see here. The Kmart one is a little bit rounder, but it still has that chunky barrel. It's kind of vaguely square shaped, it's dual tipped, and it has the smell. So even though they don't have on their packaging either that they're alcohol based, I could tell when I smelled it. This one is a water-based marker. It's from Tombow, which is a very well-known brand for bullet journaling, and you can see how different they look. Once again, the Kmart alcohol marker has a bullet tip on one side, which is a little bit finer and what I've used to write on the page here, and it has the chisel tip on the other side, which is wider and flatter and good for colouring in large areas, but really bad for bleeding through your bullet journal pages. Moral of the story here, should you use alcohol markers in your bullet journal? No, absolutely not. Don't do it. It's a trap. The journal I've used here has 80 GSM pages and is kind of a cheap one, so I want to show you on a thicker page. This notebook is from Notebook Therapy. It has 160 GSM pages. We'll get into what GSM means when we talk about notebooks soon, but for now just know that that means it's twice as thick, and then when we turn the page, you've still got bleeding. So even on a thicker page, alcohol markers are just not it. There is a little bit of improvement though from the 80 GSM page, where you'll notice it hasn't transferred onto the following page, the one on the right here. That page is still clean, so it's not quite as bad as it was in the other book, but it's still not recommended. Moral of the story, say it with me friends, don't use alcohol markers in your bullet journal. Yeah, Erin, alright, we get it, you said it 100 times. So what should we use instead? Drumroll please. No, I totally already mentioned them earlier, so I've spoiled the surprise. You want to use water-based markers in your bullet journal. And lucky for us, water-based markers are readily available in a variety of brands and colours and sizes, and so there is a lot of choice out there, which means there are a lot of choices for pens to use in your bullet journal. How can you tell if the markers you're looking at are water-based? Well, once again, it's usually written on the packaging. In fact, even more reliably so than on the alcohol markers. This is a Tombow dual brush pen, and you can see it has water-based written right there on the barrel. Water-based pens also don't have a smell, and unless you're looking at a highlighter or something like that, they're not usually chisel tipped the way the alcohol markers are. They usually have brush tips or bullet tips, and sometimes one of each on either end. Some brands that I recommend looking out for are the Tombow dual brush pens. They are well known in the bullet journal community, but they are not the cheapest markers, just to keep in mind. The Faber-Castell Pitt Artist brush pens are also great, a little bit less expensive, and you can also get very cheap options just from your local dollar store. Kmart here in Australia have a lot of water-based markers to choose from, so you aren't without options. The Tombows are my favourite because the size of the brush means that it's really easy to fill in the whole space between a row of dots in your journal, which are usually 5mm spaced. But that's just me being picky and pedantic. I used the Tombow dual brush markers for the lettering on the right page, the lovely pastel stuff going on there. On this left page, I'm showing you what the cheaper markers look like as well. They're similar and different in different ways. I recently made a whole video about Kmart bullet journaling stationery, so if you'd like to see that, hit the link up in the top right hand corner and you can find out more about what Kmart has to offer. But if we flip back to the page before, as you can see, sorry, I went one too far there, a little bit of ghosting, a tiny little bit of bleeding has come through in the places where the brush touched multiple times, but nowhere near the damage that we're seeing on the left page from the alcohol markers, which is why water-based markers are your friend. Just realised I accidentally grabbed the Kmart branding colours with the pens that I pulled out of my pencil case there. I didn't mean to do that, that was just a coincidence. There's one more kind of pen you'll probably see a lot around bullet journaling communities, and that is the paint pen, sometimes called the acrylic paint pen. Archer and Olive are really famous for their acrylograph pens. I don't have any of those, but I do have these 3 sets and I find them all really fun. And yep, you've guessed it, they're water-based. Just like how acrylic paint is also water-based, so that makes perfect sense. These ones in the black box are actually my favourite, and I have a discount code for those, so if you'd like to get your hands on that set, I'll pop a link in the description as well so that you can also enjoy some markers. Much like with the regular water-based markers, these ones all come in different shapes and sizes and colours. Some of them are brush-tipped, some of them are not, some of them are dual-tipped, and some of them are even metallic, so if you like shiny things, there's some paint pens out there for you. Let's have a little demo of these because they're really fun. So because this is laying down a layer of paint on top of the paper, they're actually very opaque, which means you can go over the top of other things and it will cover them up because it's paint. Whereas the water-based markers that are not paint pens, oops, I spelled paint wrong. The regular water-based markers that aren't paint pens will usually let what's underneath show through a little bit. So if you've made black marks with a fine liner or something like that, then you'll see them through the pen, whereas this kind of pen will cover them up. Most of the time. That's not a hard and fast rule. So let's do a little comparison of how the paint pens fare on this 80 GSM paper, which is thin, versus the 160 GSM paper, which is the thick one. So on the 80 GSM paper, you can see that some of the ink is pulled in the corners of the M on the word markers. Still hasn't bled through the page, but there is some ghosting there, which we'll talk about a little bit more soon. Let's try the acrylic paint markers on the thicker paper and see if we can notice a difference. That little red strawberry in the top corner will make sense to you soon, I promise. So you can see, because the paper is a bit thicker, it's holding up to the wetness of the paint a little bit better. It's not pulling in some of the letters the way it does on the thinner paper, and you can barely even see it from the other side. So I think acrylic paint markers work best in journals with thicker pages. I don't think that I would say they're prohibitive for a thinner page, but I think it's a little bit easier on a thicker page. So do with that whatever you will. If all this talk about GSM has been doing your head in, I've got you. We're going to talk about what makes a notebook different to another one. Because not all notebooks are created equal, and at this point I feel like I've used enough of them that I can tell you a lot. These ones from the left are from Kmart, Leuchtturm 1917, the WASHI Tape Shop, and Notebook Therapy respectively, and this one is from Archer and Olive. It's my current bullet journal. And the main difference between the notebooks that are my favorites and the notebooks that I am less keen on is the thickness of the paper that is inside. Little teaser of my October setup there if you were paying attention. So this one from Archer and Olive has 160 GSM pages. GSM stands for grams per square meter, so it's a measurement of how heavy the paper is. See how when we turn the page from the mood tracker to the content calendar here, you can't see any of the content calendar through the mood tracker page, and you also can't see any of the mood tracker markings or lettering or the little doodles through the other side either, unless you're holding the page up enough that the light shines through, and even then you can only sorta see it. That's the big reason why all the dedicated luxury bullet journal brands use 160 GSM paper in their journals, is because it means that you can't see the ghosting or what's happening on the other side of the page. The heavier the paper, the thicker the paper, and the thicker the paper, the more resilient it is to things like markers and paint. This one is from Notebook Therapy. It's a smaller notebook size, a little bit smaller than A5, which the previous notebook was an A5 size. It also has 160 GSM pages, and that means it holds up really well against bleeding and ghosting. See how this row of gold boxes isn't even visible from the other side of the page? That is possible because of the thickness of the paper. If I tried to do that same thing in the Kmart notebook, which has 80 GSM paper, which is half as thick as this 160 GSM paper, then you would definitely be able to see that gold from the other side, at least a little bit more than you can here. I've mentioned 80 GSM and 160 GSM, but there are also notebooks that have a GSM paper that falls somewhere in between the two. So this one was my first notebook for this year. It's from the WASHI Tape Shop, and it has 120 GSM paper, which is kind of right in the middle. Not quite as thick as the Notebook Therapy and Archer and Olive journals, but not quite as thin as the Kmart or Leuchtturm 1917s either. And you can see here from my cover page over to my calendar page, you can see through the page a little bit more easily than in the last notebook that I showed you, but not so much that it disrupts your use of the following page. I never actually found that it bothered me at all using this journal. Now let's move on to a thin page friend. This is from Leuchtturm 1917, which is kind of the brand that goes hand in hand with bullet journaling, at least in the traditional sense. If you haven't checked out bulletjournal.com, go do that now and then come back and watch the rest of this video. Leuchtturm 1917 notebooks usually have 80 GSM paper, which is the same as the Kmart notebook that we looked at earlier, and thin pages means seeing what's on the other side. You can see here I've just used a fine liner and a light blue Faber-Castell Pitt Artist pen, but that fine liner is quite visible through the page. You can see the marks on the opposite side from the habit tracker through the page as well. Again, it's not disrupting the use of either of the pages. You can still see where everything needs to be and use it without being too distracted. Most regular notebooks with lined paper will also have 80 GSM paper inside, so if you're starting out your bullet journal in a book that doesn't have dotted pages like these ones, which is totally okay, and I actually have a video about how to start a bullet journal in a book with lined pages that I'll pop a link to in the top right corner, just know that you'll be starting with a fairly thin page and that this might happen to you. This phenomenon of being able to see the pen through the page on the other side without it actually bleeding all the way through is called ghosting. You probably worked that out already because we've talked about it a bit so far in this video. And while its name is quite appropriate for spooky season, it's actually not really a big deal. In fact, some people actually like the way ghosting looks in their journal because it gives you kind of a lived-in feeling, but I understand that other people find it really annoying and some people don't actually really think about it at all. Here's a super close look at what ghosting might look like in an 80 GSM journal like this one from Kmart, using Sakura Pigma Micron fine liner pens and some water-based brush pens as well. You can see the word ghosting peeking through there a little bit. That's what we're talking about. If you're one of the people that ghosting bothers and you want to try and limit it in your journal, there are a few things you can do. First of all, try and avoid darker colors. Obviously on white paper, something that's black is going to show through more than something that is a light color. Also avoid going over one spot with a pen too many times, whether it's the same pen or a different one. Let's explore that idea a little bit further. So I'm going to draw a little strawberry in the top right corner of my page here. Remember that strawberry from earlier? It's all going to make sense now. So here's the outline of the strawberry, and I'm going to jump in with a red water-based marker. This is one of my nice cheap ones from Kmart. And I've just done one layer of the ink there. I haven't gone back over it at all, and you can see how it's peeking through the page there a little bit. Let's give it a second layer. Oh no, maximum damage. Beyond even just ghosting, that one has bled all the way through the page. This is on the 80 GSM paper in the Kmart notebook, so let's try that same thing again on the 160 GSM paper in my notebook therapy notebook. The same little strawberry, the same red water-based pen, just a different thickness of paper. This one is the 160 GSM, which is thicker. With one layer of pen there, it's a little bit visible through the page, but nowhere near to the level of the 80 GSM paper. Let's add another layer of the marker and see how the page stands up then. And if that's not a testament to the resilience of a 160 GSM page over an 80 GSM page, then I don't know what is. With 2 layers of marker, you can barely see it in this book, where in the other book, it pretty much destroyed the page. So clearly having a 160 GSM page or similar bullet journal is a ghosting and bleeding avoidance tactic in itself. But I know 160 GSM journals can be pretty expensive, especially when you have to factor in international shipping, so here are a couple of other things you can do as well. Instead of felt-tipped fine liners and markers, opt for pencils, biros, which I say tentatively because biros can leave indents in the page which might annoy you just as much as ghosting, gel pens, which can be great although they can be smudgy and you need to wait for them to dry, or my secret weapon, friction pens. Friction pens are a kind of erasable pen from the brand Pilot, and no, this is not sponsored at all, I just really like them. They're quite distinctive because of this kind of tribal tattoo design they have on them, which I don't really like for my own personal aesthetic, and they also have this little plastic nib on the end. They come in all sorts of colors and types. These ones that I have here are highlighters, which is why they have the chisel tip. They also come in normal ballpoint pen kind of styles, which is what the black one is, like a little fine liner, and all sorts of other things too in all kinds of colors. But what makes them so great for bullet journaling, and especially for bullet journaling in a book that has thinner pages like the 80 GSM Leuchtturms and the Kmart journal here, is that they're erasable pens. You can flip the pen over and use that little plastic nib on the back to erase whatever you've just written down in exactly the same way that you use an eraser on the end of a pencil. The ink from the friction pens sit right on the top of the page, which means that they don't show through the page quite so easily as something like the Pigma Micron here, which I've just written next to it for a bit of comparison for ghosting there. And they have the added benefit, especially if you're a new bullet journaler, of being erasable, clearly. So if you make a mistake, you don't have to live with it. You can just fix it and move on with your life. You can even layer it up for more color saturation without risking the page getting too damaged. Maybe go a little bit easy, but I've done 2 layers here and it's gone just fine. But they do come with one big caveat, and that is that they erase with friction, which creates heat. And heat is what makes the ink disappear, which means that if you leave your journal in a hot car or next to a hot oven, you might actually lose everything that you've written inside it, which isn't ideal. So use your friction pens with caution. So think of friction pens like training wheels for your bullet journal, and if you're still bullet journaling in a year and you want to step up from your friction pens to something a bit more indelible, the wide world of fine liners and 160 GSM notebooks will be waiting for you then. But what if it's already too late? What if you have a page with a bleeding or a ghosting disaster that you need fixed now? Well, if your bleeding has destroyed a page that had a layout on it that you wanted to continue using, I'm so sorry, there's not much I can do for you there besides equip you with the knowledge to prevent it from ever happening again. But if it's a situation more like this one where there's some bleeding on a page that is currently blank, there are a few things you can do. And my favorite is to stick the pages together. This is a really good tip for if you have a journal with very thin pages. Like this one, it's kind of like cheating your way to a thicker page, so just stick them together. You can use a normal old glue stick or my favorite, a glue tape. This one is also an affordable one, it's from Officeworks here in Australia. But this hack is also not the most environmentally friendly. You will waste paper by sticking your pages together. So if you know there's going to be some bleeding or ghosting that you need to mitigate in your journal, there are actually a few ways you can cover it up that double as making your journal even cuter, and my favorite of those is washi tape. I've slapped some of this black starry washi tape down over my bleedy page on the left here, and I'm just using some of this white one too to demonstrate that you might want your washi tape here to be opaque, and generally a darker color is going to work better for that. Having said that, I actually think this light patterned washi tape looks really nice over that bleeding, so sometimes it could work out. Another way is to use paper. I recommend shying away from traditional scrapbooking paper in your bullet journal because it's usually cardstock, like heavy stuff that can mess with the way your pages sit, so I like to go for thin paper. And I actually think wrapping paper and origami paper are the best options for this because the range of colors and patterns is vast. The one I've used here is from a little scrapbooking booklet from Stationery Pal, and they are nice thin sheets as well and quite affordable, so there is some scrapbooking stuff out there that's thin if you know where to look for it. Just going to stick this washi tape down on the right page here so you can see, since I missed capturing that on the left page. Sorry about that. This is one of the Starry Sky washi tapes from the washi tape shop, and it is not cheap, but I tell you what, it's freaking beautiful. I find washi tape to be best for small areas, and paper can be good to cover a really big area, and you can also then layer other stuff over the top of the paper and make a really cool layered design. Collaging is a really trendy way to decorate a bullet journal anyway, so this way you can kind of have the best of both worlds and cover your sins while also making something really cute. I keep all of my wrapping paper these days from presents and from things that I buy online that come wrapped in pretty paper. So the next time you need to cover up some stuff or just have a cute theme, you've got paper ready to go. You can use Christmas wrapping paper for Christmas themes, or you can buy wrapping paper even in single sheets if you want to have some new designs in your collection without spending as much money as you would on scrapbooking paper, which is great because scrapbooking paper can be really expensive. I had to add stick the pages together because obviously we already talked about that. And this last one is actually a way that you could even use alcohol markers in your journal with no damage, and that is to make your artwork or your page or your setup or whatever on a separate piece of paper and then stick it into your journal. And then you never have to worry about it seeping through because it wasn't on your journal paper to start with. You'll see a lot of bullet journal people do this on YouTube, where they'll use watercolor on watercolor paper and stick that in their journal, or they'll use gouache paint on art paper and stick that in. It works really well. That's it, my bullet journal Padawan. Your education into how to avoid, prevent, and correct bleeding and ghosting in your bullet journal is now complete. You have graduated from the Erin course of journaling. Well done. Thank you so much for watching and for sticking around all the way to the end of the video. I hope that you've learned a lot, and if you have a trick that I've missed or maybe I don't know about, please let us know in the comments because it's all about the love, sharing the love of avoiding bleeding and ghosting. That's a very loving thing to do. Again, if you've got anything out of this video, even if it's just to laugh at my mistakes, then don't forget to like and subscribe so you can see more stuff from me in the future. You can also find me on social media. I am at erinsmith.art on Instagram, and I'd love to hang out with you over there as well. Since you are still here at the very end of the video, I'd like to know how long you've been bullet journaling. Let's get to know each other a little bit. When did you start bullet journaling? I started in September 2017 and I have not looked back. I'll be back next Monday with my October Plan With Me video. I hope you will look forward to that. In the meantime, stay safe and well, and I'll catch you again very soon. Bye bye! Happy journaling!